Welcome to the new edition of the ABBA League magazine. 22nd round featured a classic between Cibona and Partizan. Krka was aiming for a second successive Serbian scalp as they faced Megaliks in Sremska Mitrovica. It was hot in Ljubljana as Olimpija wanted to stand firm against the second-place team of the league. And the derby game, Crvena Zvezda wanted to make sure they stayed top of the pack after the regular season, but Cedevita was a serious challenge nonetheless. And as always, we'll conclude the show by showing you the best 5 actions of the round. First with the news, George Drenovac of Igokea had successfully undergone a surgery which will keep him out of action for at least another 25 days. After parting ways with Partizan, George Gagic will continue his career in Turkey at Gaziantep, led by Jures Dots. And last but not least, Slavko Vraneš is Metalac's new reinforcement. The 32-year-old Montenegrin is now the league's tallest player with 229 centimeters. He's also a 3-time ABBA League champion with Partizan in the years between 2007 and 2010. We begin our review in Zadar, where both Zadar and Solnok had 10 wins and 11 defeats prior to meeting in the Krešimir Ćosić Hall. Zadar was happy to welcome James Florence, Ive Ivano and Lovre Basic all back to the team after their respective injuries, while Marko Brkic was unable to play for the Hungarians. Lazaric Jones was the first player to score in this match, and for the home team the first 4 points were scored by their returning captain Ive Ivano. Josip Sobin played well again, and after his mini-series in the middle of the first period, Zadar was ahead by 19-16. The biggest lead Zadar would have in the first quarter was 7 points after Bosniak made it 21-14, but that got reduced to 5 points till the end of the first period, courtesy of Miljan Rakic. Soon in the second quarter, Zadar had an 11-point lead for the first time in the match, as it took more than 4 minutes for the Hungarians to get going, when finally Michael Lee broke the deadlock to close the gap to 9 points. Well, that was a brief consolation though, as Zadar went on to score the next 8 points to open up a 16-point advantage when Bosniak made it 35-19. The home team was already in front by 17 points when Florence hit for 3, and at half-time, Solnok was still behind by 14. Ive Ivano apparently put those injury woes behind him quickly, as he managed to be Zadar's best scorer with 16 points to his name in the end, and after he opened the second half with 4 points, Zadar was back to a 17-point lead. Zadar's response was swift, and it wasn't long before they opened up another highest lead of the match, this time for 20, as Barac made it 58-38. After 30 minutes, the home team was in front by 21 points when Filip Kraljevic scored another point from the free-throw line. No real change in the last quarter, as Zadar's younger players got their chance. Ivan Vraneš hit twice with success, and the gap remained at 20. By the time Filip Kraljevic dunked to make it 71-52, the game was well and truly beyond any doubt about the winner, as David Vojvoda softened the blow a bit towards the end of the match, which finished with 71-64, as Gergely Somoli managed to hype up his statistics a bit. No real trouble in the end for Zadar. Metalac was in much better mood than the host, as Levski was still searching for that elusive win after 20 consecutive defeats. The guests from Baljevo managed to secure back-to-back wins prior to the visit to Sofia. Dimitar Angelo got things underway, and for the visitors at the other end, it was Nikola Jevtovic who would eventually have a very good display. It was the Bulgarians with a better start, and after Eftimov points, they were already 9 points to the good. But Metalac provided the right kind of answer, as they shot 3 times for 3 to equal the score to 19, which was also the result after the first 10 minutes. Metalac took their first lead when Nemanja Todorovic made it 22-21 with his second 3-pointer. Levski reclaimed the lead at 26-24 when the former Bulgarian national team player Filip Videnov scored from distance, but then it was the visitors with a bit of an initiative towards the end of the first half, especially from Jeftovic, who put Metalac 4 points in front, and that was also the margin come the end of the first 20 minutes when it was 37-33. The first points of the second half was scored by Nikola Jeftovic, who was eventually the game's best scorer with 24 points to his name, and Metalac was in front by 6. The home team did their best to stay in the match as Jimmy Hunt had closed the gap to just 1 point. Couldn't quite catch up though, as Nemanja Protic was twice successful from distance. The teams were separated by 3 points before the last 10 minutes as Eftimo made it 56-53. Then in the last quarter it was Metalac with a much better start to it as they scored 11 successive points to open up a 14-point lead, and it took more than 5 minutes for Levski to get going in the last period, and finally Alex Simeonov shot the free to give the home team a much needed impetus. There was some hope left when Filip Videnov scored 4 of his 18 altogether to reduce the deficit to 9 points, but the team from Valjevo were never going to let this one slip away. Nemanja Protic then ended the match with his 16th point. Metalac won it by 77-66. And of course that means that Levski loses for 21st time in a row. An ABA League classic between Cibona and Partizan took place in the Dražen Petrović Basketball Center, and the circumstances for both teams couldn't be more different prior to this encounter, with Cibona losing the previous 5 games while Partizan was unbeaten in the previous 8. Edo Muric opened the scoring in this one, and for Cibona it was Ivan Siriščević. Cibona took their first lead when Tomislav Gabrić made it 9-8 with a 3. The visitors took it right back and were in front by 5 points when Milenko Tepic scored from distance. After missing the Zagreb derby against Cedevita, Marko Jagodić-Kuriđa returned to the court for the protective mask and was quick to score 5 points in a row to close the gap to just 2. Nikola Milutinov wrapped up the period with Partizan in front by 4 after the first 10 minutes. Milutinov was playing really well in this game as he completely outplayed his younger counterpart Ivica Zubac, eventually finishing the game with 13 points and 8 rebounds. Cibona needed 2.5 minutes for the first and only basket from open play in the second period, with Filip Krušlin successfully scoring from distance. But it was all Partizan in this period, and by the time Sasha Pavlović dunked it nicely, they were already 12 points in front, and Pavlović was eventually best scorer with 17. The home team was clearly not up to the task in defense and were hopeless to watch Nemanja Bezbradica raising the bar to 20 points. Eventually, Partizan won the quarter by 25-7 and the first half by 50-28 as Vanja Marinković scores his first points of the game. No real change after the break as Partizan picked up where they left off, and after an 11-0 partial, Cibona was left trailing by an amazing 31 points margin. It was getting a bit embarrassing really, but at least Marko Jagodić-Kuriđa was setting a right example for the rest of his teammates. At the other end, Dragan Milosavljević would prove especially prolific in this game as he managed to score all of his shots. The black and white was in front by 68-41 after 30 minutes of play. The visitors were still hitting from distance in the last period, and when Marinković managed to do it again, it was to sustain a 29-point lead. Then a rare bright moment for the home team as they managed to score 7 points in a row, and the young Ante Žižić managed to secure a personal best in this game with 17 points, 9 of which were contributed in the last period. Dominik Maura scored from distance to set the end result with a match of 81-64. It was a big and conclusive win from the guests of Belgrade. The big difference here was 3-point shooting. Partizan lashed 10 3-pointers with 52% accuracy, while Cibona can only manage 6 threes with a 35% success rate. Megalix was in the middle of a poor run with only 1 win in 6 before taking on Krka, who arrived with 5 wins on the trot, including that incredible win over Crvena Zvezda a week ago. It happened with only 7 players playing for Krka that evening, and it was much the same this time around in Srpska Mitrovica, with key players such as Armstead, Milalic or Kukic all missing. After a couple of exchanges from both sides, Krka was in front by 11-7 after Jure Ritlov's points. But then, for the next 4 minutes, the guests couldn't score a single point, in which time Rade Zagorac scored 7 of his 18 altogether, and at the end of the first quarter, Megalix was nurturing a 10-point lead. At the start of the second one, Danilo Nikolic rounded up a run of 16 unanswered points to make it 23-11. And after that, Krka managed to score after more than 5 minutes when Erion Castrati was successful. But it was a start of better things for the visitors, who in turn put together a run of their own, and after a 16-3 partial, they were the ones taking the lead. And when Chris Booker scored 13 of his 23 altogether in the second period alone, Krka was in front by 6. In the end, Chris Booker achieved his personal best with 23 to his name. Didn't take long in the third period for Megalix to reclaim the lead after Rade Zagorac continued to play well. And when Luka Lapornik scored his first and only basket of the game, Krka was in front for the last time in this match as the home team began playing much better. As Nenad Miljenovic rounded up a 13-2 partial, Megalix was in front by 10 points again. And then the next 5 points were scored by Matej Reutz to reduce the deficit to 6 points, and that was also the margin come the end of the third period, which ended with Jokic putting it to 58-52. When Nebojša Joksimovic scored in the last period, the gap was still 6 points, but that got followed by 3 consecutive three-pointers from the home team, after which they were nurturing a 13-point lead. Miljenovic scored 10 of his 19 points altogether in the last quarter, and when he made it 73-56, the game was well and truly decided. Krka managed to soften the blow towards the end of the game, but that was all they were able to do. The end result of 81-67 was set by Nikola Jokic, as Megalix won the second half by as much as 52-33. Both MZT and Igokea had only 6 wins to their name prior to locking horns in the Macedonian capital. Much to their delight, Igokea had managed to beat Olympia before this round, while MZT was in the middle of a run of 4 straight defeats. The home team opened this match really well, and after Samardžić's points, they were in front by 8-0, while Branko Jorović then broke the deadlock for the visitors. Uroš Lučić was playing well at the other end, and when he scored his second three-pointer, MZT was already in front by 15-4. Lučić was eventually MZT's best scorer with 17 points to his name. Then it was Branko Jorovic's turn to hit from distance, which he did twice to put his team 6 points behind the hosts. The home team replied swiftly, and after he had stolen the ball, Marko Simonovski scored to give MZT a 12-point lead. The teams were separated by 11 points after the first period. MZT was already in front by 14 points when Sinovic scored from distance. But then Duško Bunić made sure the hosts wouldn't run away, scored 5 points in a row to close the gap to 9. MZT's reply was to again score from distance, and when Cvetkovic managed to do that, it was to set the new highest lead of 15 points for MZT. Marko Čukarević was the last one to score in the first half, as he set the result after the first 20 minutes. It was 48-37. But then Igokea stormed into the third period by scoring 12 unanswered points, and after Čukarevic's 3, the visitors were in front for the first time in the game, albeit by the slimmest of margins. It took MZT almost 5 minutes to break the deadlock in the second half, but when they did, it was attractive enough as Sinovic and Šehović combined nicely. Igokea was soon in front by 5 points as Bunić continued to play well. When George Milošević fired from distance, Igokea had a 6-point advantage, and that was also the margin come the end of the third period, which Igokea won by 24-7. The Canadian Bradley Heslip scored twice in a row. One of those shots was for 3, and the visitors were now 8 points to the good. 4 minutes before the end of the game, George Milosevic scored his second three-pointer and Igokea had a 10-point lead for the first time in the match. But there was some hope restored for MZT as Šehović managed to close the gap to 4. And less than a minute before time, Ljubomir Mladinovski scored to keep MZT in it, and then Marko Simonovski scored for 3 just 7 seconds before the end, but MZT was still trailing by 3. The winner was decided at the other end, where Brady Heslip scored once from the free throw line, and that was enough to ensure Igokea their first win away from home this season. In one of the games of the round, Olimpija hosted Budućnost, with both teams saying goodbye to the Eurocup prior to this important encounter in Ljubljana. Marinovic, Kanacevic and Nikolo all returned to Olimpija's lineup, while Omic had some pain to deal with after a heavy punch he took on the face in training. Darko Planinic got things going, and at the other end it was the home captain, Dino Muric. The visitors were in front by 10-8 when Bojan Subotic scored his first points of the game. But Muric was the standout player at the beginning of this one, as he scored 9 out of 10 Olimpija's points to equal the score to 10. The home team followed up on that by scoring twice from distance, and when Hrovat scored and managed to draw a foul as well, it was to round up an 11-1 partial for the home team. Budućnost had an answer though, and when Šehović struck twice for 3, he had managed to equal the score to 19, and that was also the result after the first 10 minutes. When Markovic rebounded well in offense and scored, it was to give Olimpija their highest lead of 9. And then the gap was 5 points when Vladimir Dašić scored from a quick counter-attack. Soon after that, Klemen Pripelic managed to beat the clock to put it to 39-33. It was 40-33 after the first 20 minutes of the game, with Budućnost already with 11 turnovers. Olimpija had a double-digit lead for the first time when Marko Marinovic scored for 3 at the beginning of the third period, but soon Budućnost halved the deficit when Omar Cook scored for 3 to make it 43-38. The home team's response was effective, as when Nikolo was successful, they had a 12-point advantage. Bojan Subotic then set the result after 30 minutes of play. It was 59-49. When Ivan Paunic drove to the basket nicely, Budućnost was trailing the hosts by 6 points. But Dino Muric was hot, and when he scored his second three-pointer, Olimpija was 11 points to the good again. Then Budućnost proved again it wasn't over, as J.R. Reynolds scored twice in a row to again put Budućnost just 5 points behind. But it was as close as the visitors would get in this match, as the home team had a 13-point advantage when Prepelic strolled to the basket less than 2 minutes before time. It ended with 77-66, with Alen Omic the last player to score in this match, an important win for Olimpija in the chase for that European qualification. The derby game of the round was scheduled in Belgrade, where Crvena Zvezda and Cedevita crossed swords. And then 5,000 people watched in shock as Cedevita opened the match brilliantly. And less than 2 minutes on the clock, Cedevita ran away to an 8-0 lead after Pilepic's points. Stefan Jovic was the first player to score in the home ranks, and that after a 2-minute period. Cedevita was soon in front by 10 points when Marko Arapovic scored, but Crvena Zvezda managed to reply in time, and after 2 shots from distance, they had closed the gap to just 2 points, courtesy of Marcus Williams. He didn't have a particularly good game. Still, Cedevita managed to be in front by 6 come the end of the first period, which ended with 22-16. Soon in the second quarter, Tsirbes made sure the gap was just 3, and a bit later it was 4 points when Zubcic scored from distance. But then Zvezda took complete control in the second period, and after 9 consecutive points and Tsirbes' dunk, the red and white took the lead of 32-27. Crvena Zvezda was already in front by 10 points by the time Marko Tej scored his first three-pointer, and he was not to be the only one as well. 10 points was also the margin come the end of the first half, as Jenkins managed to beat the buzzer and set the result of 43-33 after the first 20 minutes. Cedevita then played better after the interval, and when Pilepic scored twice, he had reduced the deficit to just 2 points. The answer came from Nikola Kalinic, as he scored for 3. But then the home team had some nervous moments to attend to, and after they had received 2 technical fouls, Cedevita was ready to take what was offered, and through Stanko Barac retook the lead of 50-49. In the next offense they were 4 points to the good, but after that Crvena Zvezda began another comeback with Luka Mitrovic starting it. The teams were only separated by a point when Nemanja Gordic managed to beat the buzzer of the third period. At the start of the last quarter, Miro Bilan made sure Cedevita would stay close behind. But then the home team started a run of 14 unanswered points, and some 2 minutes before the end of the match, Crvena Zvezda opened up a 16-point lead. Cedevita had scored their only second basket from open play through Luka Babic, but it was much too late, as there was only a minute remaining on the clock. It ended with 78-63, with the team from Belgrade confirming their first place after the regular season with a storming last period, which they won by 19-5. So easy wins for Zadar, Metalac and Partizan, and from Megalex as well. Igokea gets that elusive win away from home, and important wins for Olimpia over Budućnost and Crvena Zvezda over Cedevita, which really complicates things in the fight for the 4th place. But Crvena Zvezda, as we said, confirms their first place in the 22nd round already, while there is uncertainty as just how the fight for the next 3 places will pan out. Olimpia now sits alone in 5th, but there is congestion right behind their backs, as there are 3 teams with just a win less. MZT and Igokea are fighting it out for their 13th spot, while Levski can't do much more to escape their last place. Nenad Miljenovic is our most valuable player of the round, with a solid performance again, which in the end gave him the ranking index of 35. In the 34 minutes he played in the win against Krka, he scored 19 points and added 5 rebounds, 9 assists and 3 steals to that tally. And now let's take a look which actions impressed us the most in this 22nd round. We start at number 5. It is Gregor Hrovat with a block over Darko Planinic. Now there is a difference in height, obviously not in the effort. At number 4, we had this dunk from Sasha Pavlovic. He had a good game. He eventually finished it with 17 points with only 20 minutes of playing time. At number 3, it is this nice combination from Megalex, included by Rade Zagorac, one of the key figures in this match. At number 2, a nice counterattack by Partizan, and Edo Muric rounding it up well with a nice dunk. And the best action of the round comes from Sofia, and that from Levski, which turned out a nice counter-attack. Eventually they lost the game to Metalac, but this one is worth seeing again. There will be no games in the ABA League this weekend, as the regional championship gives way to national cup competitions, so the league recommences in 2 weeks' time, but the 23rd round will feature the eternal Belgrade derby, which will feature on Sunday at 7 p.m. The round will end on Monday with an interesting matchup between Metalac and Cibona. And that's all for today. Join us again next time, which will be in 14 days. Until then, it's bye-bye from us.